bist der größte Krieger von Axt und Kreuz. In einem Krieg zwischen unserer Welt und der nächsten.
And the idea for this film was inspired by one of your favorite role-playing characters.
Yeah.
How hard was it to get this movie made? Because when I imagine like you go to a Hollywood studio and say, I like this character in this quite nerdy book.
The irony is I didn't seek it out. I had written a foreword to 30 Years of Adventure celebrating Dungeons and Dragons. And in that foreword, I talked about a character that was a half-drow witch hunter named Melkor.
Hallo, Hexenjäger.
And it was my favorite character, and I talked about it. And I talked about how the experience of playing Dungeons and Dragons helped and assisted my understanding of world building and creating mythology in film.
Du musst aufwachen. Hier ist nichts echt. Du sitzt in einer Falle!
5 years after that, and 5 years ago, I had a meeting unrelated to this with a writer named Corey Goodman, who halfway through the meeting discovered that I was a Dungeons and Dragons player, and we started talking about Dungeons and Dragons. And I talked about the character that I played. And a few months later, I had received a script that was on the blacklist of Hollywood, ironically, called The Last Witch Hunter.
Ich habe mein Leben lang auf die Gelegenheit gewartet, dir zu helfen.
Jetzt hast du die Chance.
With Colder, you add like another kick-ass character to your filmography.
Oh, thank you.
How would you describe, is he different from your other like badass roles like Dom or Riddick?
First of all, face value, he's an immortal. And that's different.
Weißt du, wie es ist, ewig zu leben?
In approaching the film, what was really attractive was the idea of being able to play a character that lived in pre-modern civilization, 13th century, and simultaneously in present-day New York City. Like a Bond character would, or a Batman character would.
Ja, für das, was jetzt kommt, bist du nicht ausgebildet.
So that was, it was interesting to juxtapose both of those elements.
Willst du aufgeben?
Nein, ich will mehr Geld.
The emotional component of the character was very compelling and probably timely for me. At that time in 2014, obviously we know that was a dark time for everybody involved in Fast and Furious. And I found myself masking, hiding a lot of my sorrow and pain. One, because I have children. Two, because the public is always there and always watching. And Colder, in essence, does the same.
Ich meine, was würdest du tun, wenn der nächste Auftrag dein letzter wäre?
Das wird nie passieren.
Gönn mir die Frage.
When we see him in the beginning and he's talking to Dolan, played by Michael Caine, we see him trying to be flippant about it and saying, hey, you know what? Every day I wake up, the world sleeps a little easier. I'm fine. And Dolan keeps pressing him and keeps pressing him. And then right as they're about to get to work, you see something change in Colder where you go, okay, he's dealing with something. And that is going to be significant in this story.
Die mächtigsten Hexen, die es je auf Erden gegeben hat, sind hier, um uns zu vernichten.
Nun beginnt es.
You already talked about Colder being around the 13th century,
Sure.
and he's very different looking. You have like this Viking look in the history,
Completely
and
different.
you look like you in the
Yeah.
contemporary time. Look, I'm very disappointed or relieved that you didn't have to wear the Viking stuff the whole time.
Oh my God, relieved. I mean, just the wardrobe alone, it was a lot of fun, and it looked incredible, but it was easier to wield the flaming sword, which was practical, in modern-day garb. When I was in the 13th century warrior garb, because of the shoulder pads, it was a lot more restrictive, and I guess more dangerous because of it. I had fur. If I tilted the sword the wrong way, I would be up in flames. So in terms of the fight choreography and the sword play, the modern look was significantly less challenging.
Sag, Hexenjäger.
Hexenjäger. Sollen wir loslegen?